Title: Their virus mutated dozens of species, but humans adapted and thrived. The Zrathi had always considered themselves the pinnacle of evolution. Their technological prowess and unmatched intelligence had allowed them to conquer their homeworld and expand across the galaxy. They prided themselves on their ability to manipulate biology to perfect life, to shape species to their will. But nothing, not even their most carefully constructed designs, could prepare them for what they would face when they encountered Earth. The Zrathi had discovered Earth by accident, a planet teeming with life. They had watched from afar, studying the primitive creatures, and eventually decided to conduct an experiment, something they had done countless times before. They unleashed a virus, one that would mutate rapidly and wipe out the planet's native species, allowing them to begin their own project to improve the life forms on Earth. But what the Zrathi didn't anticipate was humanity. They watched in fascination as the virus began to spread. It was as they expected. Most species, from the simplest bacteria to the larger mammals, were rapidly mutated and fell victim to the disease. The virus was engineered to adapt quickly, changing forms as it encountered resistance, constantly evolving in ways that kept the species it infected on the brink of extinction. The Zrathi felt confident. This was just another step in their evolution as superior beings. However, what they didn't know was that humans were different. Humans, with their capacity for innovation and their relentless will to survive, didn't fall as easily as the Zrathi had hoped. While other species were slowly wiped out, humans began to fight back. At first, their response was just what any species would do: quarantine, isolate, and attempt to develop a cure. But unlike any species the Zrathi had encountered before, humans didn't stop there. They studied the virus, understanding its mutations, and began to experiment. It didn't take long before they discovered a way to evolve with it rather than against it. They used their biology to adapt. They modified their own genes, integrating small amounts of the virus into their bodies. As the virus mutated, humans adapted right alongside it. What was once a death sentence became a symbiotic relationship. Their immune systems evolved in ways the Zrathi never thought possible, becoming stronger, faster, and more resilient with each passing mutation. Soon, the virus that was designed to destroy humanity had, in fact, made them stronger. The Zrathi were stunned. They had never seen anything like this before. Species they had tested on in the past, including some of the most advanced in the galaxy, had fallen. But here were these humans, whose very bodies were evolving at a pace that rivaled the virus itself. It was no longer a simple disease. It was a force of nature, and humans were riding its tide, thriving and adapting in ways that bent the very rules of biology. What the Zrathi had once seen as an experiment had become humanity's evolution, a story of survival, adaptation, and overcoming the odds. The virus, which was supposed to bring the planet to its knees, had instead led humanity to discover their true potential. The humans didn't just survive, they flourished. With every mutation, their strength increased, their senses sharpened, and their minds expanded. Soon, they became immune to the virus entirely, using it as a stepping stone for further advancements in science, medicine, and even space exploration. The Zrathi, now realizing that they had created the very thing they had feared, could only watch in awe. They had tried to play God, but they had unwittingly created something far beyond their control. The humans didn't just overcome the virus, they absorbed it, turned it into their advantage, and in doing so, proved that their greatest strength was their ability to adapt. The Zrathi knew their experiment was over. They had underestimated the resilience of a species that could evolve faster than any virus they could design. The virus had mutated dozens of species, but humanity had become the ultimate victor, not because they were the strongest, but because they had the greatest will to survive. And now, as the Zrathi fled from the planet, they understood one thing very clearly: humans were not to be underestimated. They were not just a species to conquer, they were the future of the galaxy. The Zrathi's legacy would be the virus that united humanity in a way nothing else could. The humans had absorbed it, adapted to it, and emerged stronger than ever. And now, the universe would have to contend with the unstoppable force that was humanity. Part 2: The Rise of Humanity. The Zrathi had thought themselves invincible. They were an ancient race, with centuries of technological and biological advancements, unrivaled in their empire. But as they retreated from Earth, their arrogance turned to fear. For they knew something that none of their previous enemies had ever demonstrated before: humans did not simply survive, they dominated. The virus that the Zrathi had unleashed, initially intended to eradicate humanity, had inadvertently become their greatest ally. No longer a tool of destruction, it was now a catalyst for the greatest leap in human evolution. With each new mutation, humans became more attuned to their environment, faster, stronger, and more resilient. But the virus wasn't done evolving, and neither were the humans. Over the next few decades, humanity grew beyond the virus's initial effects. Scientists, doctors, and engineers worked tirelessly, using the virus to unlock new genetic possibilities. They discovered ways to manipulate the virus's changing structure, integrating its most beneficial traits into their bodies. Some humans developed heightened senses, others gained unprecedented physical strength. The evolution was rapid, almost too fast for the rest of the galaxy to comprehend. The first major breakthrough came when a team of human researchers unlocked the secret to viral symbiosis. They learned to control the virus's mutations, guiding their bodies through the changes rather than reacting passively. Humans began to see the world differently, literally. Their vision could now penetrate through various spectrums of light, allowing them to see the infrared or ultraviolet. Their hearing became so acute that they could detect the faintest sounds across vast distances. The second breakthrough was the understanding of mental adaptation. With the virus reshaping their brain chemistry, humans developed telepathic abilities, enabling them to communicate across vast distances with nothing but thought. It wasn't perfect at first, but the potential was clear. Entire cities communicated without a single word spoken. The Zrathi, who had once manipulated the minds of lesser species, now faced a species whose collective intelligence had reached a new zenith. But it wasn't just physical and mental enhancements that made humanity a force to be reckoned with. Humanity's spirit, its determination, was its most profound asset. Every challenge the virus threw at them was met with resilience and innovation. When the Zrathi tried to deploy another weapon, a strain of the virus designed to further destabilize the human genome, they found the humans had already adapted to it. They didn't need to fight back with force, they simply outpaced the virus. And then, there was the singular moment that changed the course of history: the first encounter between human and Zrathi forces in open space. The Zrathi, now recovering from their failed experiment, began to regroup in distant star systems, building up their fleets and technology once again. But they couldn't ignore Earth. As humanity spread across the stars, they sent scout ships and mining colonies to distant moons and planets. What the Zrathi had not anticipated was how quickly humans adapted to space travel. Their newly evolved biological forms allowed them to withstand the stresses of space better than any species before them. The Zrathi sent their warships to eradicate humanity's expanding colonies, underestimating how prepared humans were. When the first battle took place in the asteroid belt, the Zrathi ships, with their advanced weapons and military strategy, were outmaneuvered. Humans had evolved in ways the Zrathi hadn't thought possible. They not only understood the Zrathi's tactics but anticipated them. With their newly enhanced reflexes, telepathic communications, and rapid adaptability, human fleets fought with a coordination and precision the Zrathi couldn't counter. It was humanity's first taste of warfare in space, but they adapted quickly. The Zrathi found themselves engaged in a war not just for survival, but for dominance. As their ships fell one by one to the relentless human onslaught, they began to understand that the Earth they had tried to destroy had now become the greatest threat to their empire. And then came the inevitable: the humans' counterattack. Humanity, led by their newly formed galactic fleet, stormed the Zrathi homeworld. Their technology, augmented by the virus's endless mutations, had transformed them into a force unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Zrathi had failed to comprehend the power of the human spirit and their boundless capacity to evolve and overcome adversity. Their virus, the very weapon they had created to crush humanity, had instead forged the species into a superpower. The Zrathi were forced to negotiate, offering a truce. They knew they could not win. They had miscalculated every aspect of humanity, from their biological adaptability to their relentless will to survive. Humanity did not seek annihilation. What they wanted was peace, on their terms. They would not bow to the Zrathi. Instead, they offered a deal. The Zrathi would leave Earth and the surrounding star systems. In exchange, humanity would share their knowledge and technology with the galaxy. fostering cooperation and peace. The Zrathi, left with no other option, begrudgingly accepted. As humanity emerged victorious, they knew this was just the beginning. They had proven that survival was not enough. It was about adapting, evolving, and mastering every challenge that came their way. The galaxy, once dominated by the Zrathi, would now feel the weight of humanity's resolve. The virus that had once been designed to wipe out the human race had instead led them to their greatest triumph, and with it, the universe now had a new, powerful player. The humans had adapted, they had thrived, and they would shape the future of the galaxy, on their terms. The Zrathi would never forget the lesson they learned that day. Never underestimate a species that has the will to evolve and adapt, because in the end, that species would always find a way to triumph. Part 3, The Dawn of a New Era. The Zrathi, humbled by their defeat and forced into a reluctant truce, withdrew from the contested star systems. The humans, once a fledgling species on a small, isolated planet, had risen to dominate the galaxy in a way that no one could have predicted. Their victory was not just the defeat of a single alien empire, it was the dawn of a new era, one where humanity's adaptability and resilience were seen as their greatest strengths. The treaty between the Zrathi and humanity marked the beginning of a new galactic order. The Zrathi, still bitter, agreed to relinquish their control over vast swaths of space, but in return, humanity offered cooperation. The humans understood that they were no longer just a race of survivors. They were now a guiding force for others who had once feared or underestimated them. Humanity's rise had not only disrupted the balance of power but created an opportunity for the rest of the galaxy to evolve in a more harmonious direction. Over the next few decades, humans established diplomatic ties with dozens of species. Their technological and biological advancements became the foundation of a new alliance, a coalition of diverse species united under the banner of mutual cooperation and growth. The humans shared the secret of their evolutionary journey, opening up the possibilities of biological enhancement and genetic engineering to other civilizations. Many races, once on the brink of extinction due to environmental collapse or genetic stagnation, found new hope in humanity's advances. However, not all of the galaxy's species were eager to join humanity's vision. Some saw the rise of humans as a threat to their own power, while others were wary of the rapid pace of human innovation. One such species, the Varnax, a race of hyper-intelligent, telepathic beings, saw humanity's use of the virus and the rapid genetic manipulation as a form of corruption. To them, evolution should be slow, measured, and free from such unnatural interference. They argued that humanity's rise had come at the expense of their natural development. For years, tensions simmered between the Varnax and humanity. The Varnax, though not a warlike species, were formidable in their own right, and they began to oppose the growing human influence in the galaxy. They argued that humanity's technological edge would unbalance the peace that had taken so long to establish. But for all their intelligence, the Varnax were not prepared for humanity's greatest strength, its unity. When the first skirmishes broke out between the Varnax and human fleets, it was clear that humanity's capacity to adapt had reached a new height. Their military tactics were unparalleled, utilizing new forms of warfare, cloaking technologies, adaptive shields, and weapons capable of altering the very fabric of space itself. They had created weapons that were not only designed for destruction but for preservation. Humanity was no longer just fighting to defend itself but fighting for the future of the galaxy. And as the Varnax watched, they realized that humanity's evolution had surpassed their own understanding of progress. The humans, once struggling to survive a virus, had now become the architects of a new galaxy, a galaxy where adaptation and innovation were key to survival, and where stagnation was the true enemy. It was in this moment, when war seemed inevitable, that humanity's true potential shone once more. Instead of escalating the conflict, the humans reached out to the Varnax. They knew that their greatest strength was not in warfare, but in the willingness to evolve, to change, and to grow together. The Varnax, reluctantly at first, agreed to a summit with human representatives, and at that summit, the humans did something the Varnax had never expected. They offered to help them evolve. Using the knowledge they had gained from the virus, the humans introduced the Varnax to the concept of controlled evolution, genetic enhancements that could refine their telepathic abilities and physical capabilities. The Varnax, initially resistant, began to see the advantages of such a path. Through years of collaboration, the Varnaks were transformed, not into a lesser version of themselves, but into something greater. They could now combine their telepathic abilities with human advancements, creating a new form of communication that transcended words, merging thought and technology seamlessly. It was a turning point for the galaxy. The humans, once underestimated and on the verge of extinction, had not only survived but had become the galactic leaders in biological and technological progress. And, most importantly, they had proven that evolution was not something to be feared. It was something to be embraced, nurtured, and shared. The Varnaks and humanity formed a powerful alliance, and together, they spearheaded the creation of a new governing body, the Galactic Council of Evolution. This council was dedicated to guiding the galaxy into a future where species could continue to evolve, not just biologically, but culturally and socially. The council was not a military force but a body of cooperation and mutual growth, where no species was left behind, and where every species could learn from humanity's journey. Under the leadership of humanity, the galaxy began to flourish. Planets that had once been ravaged by war or disease now thrived. Species that had been on the verge of extinction now stood strong, their futures secure in the hands of those who had the wisdom to understand the power of change. But despite all their success, humanity never forgot the lessons learned from the Zrathi virus. They remembered how they had been tested, how they had overcome what seemed like insurmountable odds. It was a reminder that no matter how powerful an enemy or obstacle may seem, the true power of humanity lay in its ability to adapt. As humans gazed out at the stars, they knew one thing above all: they had evolved. They had mastered their own destiny, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Part 4: The Price of Evolution. As humanity continued to lead the charge for galactic cooperation, they began to see the fruits of their efforts in ways they hadn't anticipated. Entire star systems once at war now sat at peace. The resources of the galaxy flowed freely, and trade routes, previously guarded by the ever-present threat of piracy, became a thriving network of mutual benefit. The rise of the Galactic Council of Evolution was a symbol of everything humanity had accomplished, and everything they were willing to share. But not all was as harmonious as it appeared. A shadow was beginning to cast itself over the galaxy, an emerging faction of humans who feared that the very thing that had made them great was now becoming their greatest threat. These individuals, calling themselves the Purists, believed that humanity's rapid evolution, spurred by their genetic manipulation and the virus, was unnatural and dangerous. They argued that by continuing to adapt so quickly, humans risked losing the very essence of what made them human. The Purists were not a small fringe group. They were well-funded and highly organized, composed of former military officers, scientists, and even influential politicians who had become disillusioned with humanity's new direction. They began to see the accelerated evolution of humanity as a form of existential threat, not just to themselves, but to the entire galaxy. Their fear was rooted in a belief that if humanity continued to evolve at such a breakneck pace, they would eventually outgrow the other species, or worse, become something entirely different, something unrecognizable. Their influence grew as they spread their message. A growing number of humans who felt disconnected from the rest of the galaxy found solace in the purist philosophy. It wasn't just about rejecting the virus and genetic modification, it was about rejecting change itself. They called for a return to simpler times, when humanity was less dependent on their technological and biological advancements. They wanted to preserve the natural human form, untainted by the outside influences of the virus or the evolution it had sparked. The Purists soon began to infiltrate political positions within the Galactic Council of Evolution. The Council, though committed to progress and cooperation, now faced an internal schism. Some members, including those who had been instrumental in humanity's rise, began to wonder if the Purists had a point. Were they pushing humanity too far, too fast? Were they risking everything in their relentless pursuit of growth? Tensions escalated when a faction of Purists attempted to sabotage a major summit on the planet of Perrin 6. A world chosen to host a conference that would determine the future of interspecies genetic enhancements. The Purists saw this summit as the pinnacle of everything they opposed: humanity's growing influence, the spread of genetic modifications, and the galaxy's rapid evolution. The attack was swift and brutal. A massive cyber assault crippled the summit's security systems, allowing purist operatives to infiltrate and take control of the conference hall. In the chaos, several prominent scientists and leaders were taken hostage, and the very future of the Galactic Council was threatened. For the first time, humanity faced an internal conflict as intense as any external war. In the aftermath of the attack, the purists declared a revolution of reversion. They demanded that all genetic modifications be rolled back, that the virus and its enhancements be abandoned, and that humanity return to its pre-evolutionary state. They argued that the virus had been a mistake, that the rapid progression of humanity's biological and technological capabilities was something to fear, not celebrate. To them, the price of constant evolution was too high. Humanity had already evolved too far to understand the risks they were taking. The Galactic Council, now divided, found itself caught in a delicate balance. On one side, the advocates for progress, those who understood that evolution was the key to survival in the galaxy, continued to push for further advancements. On the other side, the purists argued that the dangers of unchecked evolution were far too great, not just for humanity, but for the galaxy as a whole. This division threatened to tear apart the very fabric of the interstellar community that humanity had worked so hard to build. As the debate raged on, humanity was faced with a critical choice: continue their path of rapid evolution and risk creating a new hierarchy that could destabilize the galaxy, or pull back and risk stagnation, potentially losing the edge that had made them the most adaptable and powerful species in the universe. The solution wasn't easy, but humanity, true to form, began to look for a middle ground. They recognized that the desire for progress had to be tempered with caution, that evolution wasn't just about going forward at all costs, it was about understanding when to pause, reflect, and ensure that the future they were creating was one of balance. A new era began to take shape, one where the virus was no longer just a tool of rapid change, but a catalyst for introspection. The Galactic Council of Evolution, now reformed to include representatives from both the progressive and purist factions, created new guidelines. Genetic enhancements would no longer be forced upon every species. Instead, they would be an option, offered with caution and full transparency, ensuring that no race would ever evolve too quickly without fully understanding the consequences. For humanity, this was a hard lesson. They had learned that while their ability to adapt was their greatest strength, unchecked evolution could also become a burden. They began to integrate the virus into their culture more carefully, ensuring that every individual had the freedom to choose whether to embrace further enhancements or to remain as they were. It was no longer about becoming the ultimate species, it was about becoming the best version of themselves, while respecting the diversity and choices of others. The galaxy, too, learned from humanity's example. Evolution, both biological and cultural, was a delicate balance, and the pursuit of progress had to be tempered with wisdom. No species could rise unchecked without considering the greater consequences. The future of the galaxy was not one of endless conquest or stagnant isolation, but one of mutual growth, understanding, and respect for the choices of every species. Humanity had faced their greatest challenge yet, not from an external enemy, but from within, and in the end, it was their ability to adapt, to evolve both biologically and philosophically, that allowed them to overcome it. The future of the galaxy remained uncertain, but humanity had proven one undeniable truth: they were not just survivors of a virus, they were the masters of their own destiny. Part 5: The Shattered Horizon. The galaxy was once again at a crossroads. The aftermath of the Purist Revolution had left its mark on the Galactic Council of Evolution. While the internal divide had been managed, the fractures in unity were still visible. Some species, particularly those less willing to embrace change, viewed humanity's approach with suspicion. They were watching the unfolding situation with a mixture of awe and trepidation, wondering if the humans had learned enough from their past or if they were still playing with fire. Despite the tension, the Council moved forward, working to find new solutions to ensure that humanity's evolutionary path didn't overshadow the future of other species. The purists had not been completely defeated, they had become a force in the galaxy, advocating for caution and regulation, creating a counterbalance to the progress-minded factions. Humanity's remarkable adaptability and their ability to rapidly alter their biology had proven both their strength and their potential for unintended consequences. The real challenge, however, was yet to come. Word spread across the galaxy that a new threat was emerging, one that was not from within, but from beyond the stars. A signal had been detected. Strange, erratic, but undeniably powerful, coming from an unknown region of space, far beyond even the most distant human colonies. It was a signal unlike any the galaxy had ever encountered. It was not a distress signal, nor was it a call for help. It was something much darker, something more unsettling, a beacon, alive with an intelligence that was far older and far more sophisticated than anything the galaxy had ever known. Humanity, ever the pioneers, could not ignore it. The Galactic Council, now unified under the banner of cooperation and cautious evolution, decided to investigate. A coalition fleet was assembled, comprising representatives from all the species that had joined the council. The human fleet, more advanced than any other, led the charge. They had the most ships, the most developed technology, and the most experience in confronting the unknown. Their exploration of space had always been a symbol of their drive for growth, and now it would be tested in ways they hadn't imagined. As they ventured deeper into the uncharted sector, the signal grew stronger, its origins becoming more defined. It led them to a massive, hollowed-out asteroid field, the remnants of an ancient, forgotten civilization. The structures within the field were colossal, made from a material unknown to all the galaxy's scientists. The asteroid field, once a rich source of minerals and resources, had long ago been turned into a vast monument, a relic of a civilization that had fallen into the annals of time. At the heart of the field lay a massive, dormant structure. It pulsed with an eerie, cold energy. It was a machine, no, a weapon, and it had been waiting for someone to find it. The crew of the human fleet's flagship, Revelation, boarded the structure, their fear palpable. The atmosphere was thick with a sense of foreboding, like the walls themselves held memories of something terrible. As they ventured deeper into the bowels of the ancient weapon, they encountered strange relics, devices that seemed to hum with energy, though they were long dormant. Alien symbols, carved in geometric patterns, covered every surface. Yet the message was clear: this civilization had been destroyed by their own creation, a weapon so powerful that it had destroyed them from within. Upon reaching the heart of the machine, humanity's scientists realized with a sinking dread that the signal they had been following was not merely a call, it was an activation code, one that had been lying dormant for millennia, waiting to be triggered by the arrival of a new species capable of unlocking its potential. The realization hit them all like a hammer. The signal wasn't just a beacon, it was a message from an ancient, lost civilization, a warning of the destructive potential of unchecked technological and biological evolution. In the center of the structure was a vast chamber, where an enormous, crystalline core sat, radiating with dark energy. It was clear now that this weapon, this relic, had the ability to destroy entire star systems, to annihilate anything in its path. A single pulse from it could end the peaceful coexistence humanity had worked so hard to build. Humanity's fleet commanders immediately debated whether to destroy the machine or attempt to study it. The purists, who had joined the mission as part of the coalition, argued vehemently for destruction. They warned that to tamper with such a device was to risk unleashing another catastrophe, one that might end their evolution, and perhaps their very existence. But the progress-minded counselors, including many humans, argued that this was an opportunity to understand the source of the galaxy's greatest technological power. They could learn from it. If they understood it, they could prevent it from ever being used again. Humanity had already survived a virus that had nearly wiped them out. Could they now confront this ancient weapon and master it as they had mastered their own evolution? The debate raged on, and it soon became clear that the galaxy was divided. The purists, who had already been in opposition to the pace of human evolution, now saw this discovery as proof of their worst fears. Uncontrolled power and technology, left unchecked, would inevitably lead to disaster. The progress-driven factions, including the humans, saw the potential to harness the weapon and safeguard the galaxy from external threats. They argued that this weapon was not inherently evil, it was how it was used that mattered. The coalition's unity began to unravel. Each species, each faction, began to fracture, unsure of what the right course of action truly was. Some called for the immediate destruction of the weapon, fearing that its power would corrupt them all. Others insisted that they could control it, believing that humanity's ability to evolve was their greatest advantage. The galaxy, once united under the banner of cooperation, now stood on the brink of another great war, not a war of conquest, but a war over the very nature of power itself. The weapon, the result of a long-dead species mistake, was now a test for all those who sought to wield it. Humanity had faced down a virus, internal rebellion, and galactic upheaval, but this, the unknown power of an ancient machine, was the greatest test they had ever faced. Would they rise to meet it, mastering the very power they had once feared? Or would they fall prey to the same destructive impulses that had shattered so many civilizations before them? As the crew of the Revelation stood in the heart of the machine, waiting for a decision that could change the fate of the galaxy forever, one truth was undeniable: humanity's greatest challenge had only just begun. Part 6: The Reckoning. The tension in the chamber surrounding the crystalline core was palpable. The hum of the machine grew louder, like the heartbeat of an ancient creature stirring from its long slumber. The crew of the Revelation stood frozen, unable to tear their eyes away from the ominous pulse of dark energy emanating from the core. It seemed to beckon them, its power undeniable. The question was no longer whether they could control it, but whether they should even try. The Galactic Council had fractured. What had once been a unified front of cooperation and hope was now splintering into opposing factions, each believing that their path was the only true course. The purists, still reeling from the purist revolution, saw the weapon as the ultimate proof of their fears. To them, it was a cautionary tale, a powerful reminder that no species should ever evolve unchecked. The progress-minded factions, however, believed the weapon could be controlled, that humanity's rapid evolution had given them the unique capacity to handle such power. The council members on board the flagship Revelation were at an impasse, but even more unsettling was the growing realization that their very presence in this alien weapons chamber had triggered something. The core seemed to react to them, its energy intensifying in waves, as if responding to their conflict. The Revelation's AI, a highly advanced system designed to analyze and predict threats, began flashing warnings. It was as though the machine was alive, aware of their intentions. Captain Elena Drax stood at the forefront, her face set in determination. She had witnessed the evolution of humanity firsthand, the rise from a species on the brink of extinction to the dominant force in the galaxy. She had seen humanity overcome the Zrathi, navigate the purist revolution, and unite disparate species under the banner of peace. But this was different. This was a power far beyond anything they had ever faced. If used incorrectly, it could wipe out everything they had fought for. "We're not just dealing with a weapon here," Elena said, her voice steady, though the gravity of the situation weighed on her. "This is something else, a living relic of a lost civilization, with the potential to destroy or create." Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Asha Carlin, stood beside her, her fingers hovering over the ship's controls. She was one of the few who had seen the viral enhancements to their fullest extent. Her abilities, like many humans, had been magnified by the viral mutations. She had keen instincts, faster reflexes, and a heightened sense of perception. Yet, even she felt the unease of the moment. "Captain, this isn't just a machine," she said quietly. "It's a sentient artifact, a relic of something far older than us. We're not the first to come here. It's been waiting for someone to awaken it." The ship's science officer, Dr. Naya Velasquez, a leading geneticist and expert in bioengineering, piped up from the background. "The viral mutations we've undergone are rapid evolution. It's not just biological, it's also cerebral. Our minds are more adaptable, more capable of processing complex systems like this one. But that doesn't mean we can control it. We can barely understand it." Elena nodded solemnly. They had come to the galaxy's edge, facing an ancient power that could either lift them to new heights or lead to their undoing. The problem was, they didn't know which path they were on. The council's debate raged on, but the weight of the situation had now crossed from theoretical discussion to something far more immediate. Elena could feel it in her bones: the machine, the relic, the core. They were waiting for the decision to be made. If they hesitated too long, they might lose control of the situation entirely. Suddenly, a voice cut through the air, an unexpected, eerie sound. It wasn't the crew's voices or the ship's AI, but something alien. The core of the machine pulsed again, and the voice reverberated through the room. "You have awakened us, but you are not yet ready." The words echoed in the minds of everyone present, clear and cold, without emotion. It was not speech, but thought, direct communication, bypassing language entirely. For a brief moment, all of the humans, all of the species present, stood in shock. They had been right. This weapon, this artifact, was not just a machine. It was something more. It was sentient, a consciousness far older than humanity, older than the Zrathi, older than even the galaxy itself. "Who are you?" Elena asked aloud, though she wasn't sure if the question would even matter. It was a direct thought now, an exchange of consciousness. Her voice trembled, despite her attempts at control. "We are the guardians of the horizon. We are the creators and the destroyers. We are the inheritors of the first truth. Evolution is not just change, but the cycle of creation and decay." The room fell silent, the weight of the message hanging heavily over them. The guardians had made themselves known, but their purpose remained unclear. What did they mean by the first truth? And what did they mean by creation and decay? "Guardians of the horizon, Dr. Velasquez whispered. "That's a reference to the first galactic age, the myth of the first civilizations. There were rumors about them, but no one ever found evidence. Are they real? Did they leave this weapon behind as a warning?" The voice of the guardians replied before anyone could respond. "We left this behind not as a warning, but as a test. The cycle of evolution is the heart of all life. You, humans, have surpassed all other species in your capacity to adapt. You are not like the others. You are the inheritors of our legacy. But you must understand, all cycles come to an end. You cannot control this power without losing yourself. The machine you stand before is not a tool. It is a reflection of your desires, your fears. If you seek to wield it, you will become it. You will become the next step in the cycle of destruction." The words struck deep into the hearts of the humans in the room. What the guardians were saying was clear. The weapon was not merely a means to an end, it was a mirror. It reflected the very essence of its wielders. If humanity sought to control it, they would be transformed, not by their own design, but by the machine's own will. The implications were staggering. Humanity's evolution had always been a response to challenges, adapting to survive, growing stronger, faster, more resilient. But now, the question had shifted. Could they maintain their humanity while gaining power over a weapon of such magnitude? Or would they lose their identity, becoming something else entirely? The decision was now in their hands. Could they resist the temptation of ultimate power? Could they find another way to solve the galaxy's problems without becoming the very thing they feared most? The clock was ticking. The Guardian's warning echoed in their minds like a final judgment. The fate of the galaxy, and perhaps of humanity itself, rested on the choice they were about to make. Elena Drax, the captain of the Revelation, took a deep breath. She looked around at her crew, her allies, the representatives of the galaxy. The weight of the moment felt heavier than any battle they had ever fought. It was time to decide. "We will not be the architects of our own destruction," Elena said, her voice firm. But even as the words left her mouth, she wasn't sure if they were enough to change the course of fate.